I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Nena Erb, Emmy-winning editor, this time also nominated once again for Insecure. First of all, Nena, congratulations on once again getting another nomination for Insecure. That must be so exciting for you.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. I couldn't believe it. I didn't expect it this year at all because I thought, yeah, Insecure dropped a year ago. People have forgotten and moved on. So yeah, that Tuesday was very exciting.
Do you recall like where you were or how you found out? I always love to know how people find out about getting such an exciting, such exciting news.
Well, because I wasn't expecting anything, it was like any other Tuesday. Got up, was ready to go to work. We're having some remodeling done to our house, so the contractors are around. It was a little chaotic, and all of a sudden, I get a text from my friend Lauren, who was like, "Congratulations!" And my brain was so at I don't even know where my brain was at. It was basically like, just get your stuff together and get out of the house so you're not late to work. So I didn't know how to even respond to her. I think I sent her a question mark. And then she sent me the link to the announcement. And so I was like, oh my God. And I seriously, I had to sit down for a second because it blew my mind. I really didn't see this coming, especially with all these great shows and these heavy hitters in comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are editors whose work I admire. So I'm humbled and
Yeah.
grateful.
Absolutely. I mean, for people who don't know, you're up against an episode of Barry and Hacks, two from Only Murders and two from Ted Lasso. And let's just make it very clear here that you won last time. So for Low Key Trying, which was, I mean, just the editing you did on that episode was phenomenal. I'm so happy that you won. Before we talk about, what's going on this year, let's think back to that night when it was announced that you had won the Emmy. It's not your first Emmy. You've won before, not for Insecure, for Project Greenlight. But what was it like? Was it a really fun occasion for you to take home that second Emmy?
It was an interesting night. We were in a pandemic, and so there was no awards ceremony, and a lot of it didn't feel real. I had my family over for dinner. We're gonna watch the ceremony on TV, and my nieces were there. So I was like, okay, so winning is not everything. It's gonna be fine if we don't win. We're just here. We're having a good time. It's an honor to be nominated. Blah blah blah. And as I'm saying this, they announce that I'm the winner, and they just jump up and scream, and I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, okay, well, that wasn't quite the lesson I was trying to teach them, but okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so cool. I remember when you won too. I was so thrilled for you. It was just great work. And then once again, nominated for the episode called Choice is Okay. Um, we were saying offline, maybe as a little bit of a joke, but I don't know. Like, I think the other people in your category should be worried because every time you're nominated, you win. So you're the heavy hitter.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the pressure. I mean, that's so much pressure.
Oh,
I
yeah, I
you
don't
know,
want to jinx it. No pressure, no pressure. It's great to be nominated. So I'd like to know why you decided to choose that particular episode. Choice is Okay. It's a really good one. It's towards the end of the final season. Why did you choose that one?
I loved every episode I worked on the season. I had so much fun cutting. I worked with Kerry Washington again. Got to work with Ava Bukowski, who is our DP, who was also nominated. She directed an episode, and Natasha Rothwell. We did the episode where Issa throws the baby in the trash, which is a lot of fun. I know I still laugh when I visualize that.
Yeah.
And Kevin Bray, he directed this episode, Choice is Okay, and when I read the script, I just immediately fell in love with it because, I mean, I don't know how many people can relate to this, but as a freelance editor, I'm constantly debating on like, did I make the right choice? Like, am I picking the right show? Is this the right group of people I'm working with? I mean, obviously, yes, Insecure was definitely the right choice,
Yeah.
but you kind of do other jobs in between, and so there's always this question, right? And it's like, is it getting me closer to the goalpost? And but of course, every time I get there, I move it further away. So,
Absolutely.
um, so yeah, so that episode really resonated with me because Issa is at a crossroads with her personal life, her career. She has to make some really hard choices, and in it there are some fantasies that kind of give you a little look into what, her decisions would bring her if she were to choose one way versus another. And these were written in such an interesting way because there's like fantasies within fantasies. And I remember reading it thinking, okay, visually, this is going to be fascinating because I'm not sure how I want to do this so it's clear and still making it look like an episode of Insecure. I mean, we have fantasies, but they were often very short and
Yeah.
definitely used for comedic effect, not to show you what the future holds. And these were really long too, compared to what we were used to doing. So, it was a matter of like making sure the transitions flowed from one to another, and also making sure that it was clear like when we were in the real moment versus like her fantasy and then the fantasy within the fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was brilliant too because Issa did such an interesting thing with her performance. It's like every time she was in reality, she was a certain level of confidence, and then in her fantasy, it was a little more confident, and then in the fantasy within the fantasy, she was like the boss, right? So that was like the height of confidence and
Yeah.
elegance. She just was like, she was great. She was flawless, and so I think the subtlety of her tweaking her performance that way helped the clarity of it, and and we just had so much fun with it too because
Yeah.
Kevin he's hilarious and he's a genius. He had this idea of doing like these little horror film kind of moments in these fantasies. There was one where Issa comes home after getting the key to the city, which she also got in real life. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, so she comes home, she got the key to the city, and she's doing some stuff around the house or the apartment, and she hears Lawrence's voice,
Yeah.
and he's dressed exactly like Nathan, like down to like the gold chain. So and he's like inching towards her, praising her for like choosing to go with her heart. And I don't know why, but just like the two of them she's standing still, he's coming towards her. It made me think of Jaws. So I was
Yes.
like, it's really not the show, but I'm gonna try this theme to Jaws. It made me laugh so hard. It made Kevin laugh, but then we both decided, okay, we've had a good laugh. This is not the show, so let's dial it back a little bit.
Yeah.
But we still picked like a horror film esque score for those little moments, just kind of heighten the laugh, I guess, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
It works because to me, it was almost like a jump scare when he turned up. And
yeah,
I'm like, that's not Nathan. And then it took me a second to realize what was going on. And also, I totally noticed when we were in the fantasy and then the fantasy within the fantasy that Issa had a very different way of holding herself. The costuming was different, the hair was different, but your editing was really different. Can you pinpoint another thing that you did during the fantasies that you wouldn't normally do on the show when they're just living their normal lives?
oh gosh, I try to kind of hold the shots longer than I normally would.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just to allow the audience to take in the new environment that she's in.
Yeah.
Especially when she got home after like traveling the world, and she's in this beautiful like apartment that could be in Dwell magazine. And it was such a different look and feel that I kind of wanted to just stay in there so that people can absorb it the way that she's taking it in, because she's walking around kind of like realizing this
Yeah.
is where she lives now. Like,
Panning.
how did that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my approach to those. Yeah, and then it was just like making sure the transitions worked really well, and that they flowed. Either she would wipe herself off camera or into camera, and then like we had our post coordinator Stephen record the voice of uh, the flight captain, and and I don't know why, but it makes me so happy to hear him say, they're about to land, so buckle up or whatnot. And so when she looks up, we were supposed to see the light that says the seatbelt, fasten your seatbelt. But instead of that, we see the light to her apartment, to the hallway to apartments, and that's what leads her into it. So it's like little things like that
Yeah.
we kind of added.
That is like butter. It's so smooth. The way those transitions were absolute gold. I was also thinking that the mirror talk is like probably my favorite thing about the show. And there's a lot that I love about it, but I just love it when she's talking to her alter ego in the mirror. And that's changed a lot over 5 seasons. But this episode had a lot of it. And I sound like a bit of a dummy, but I still don't quite know how you all achieve that. And I'm just wondering, how difficult is it to cut those scenes when you've got close-ups, wide shots, mid shots, both of them together? Like, it blows my mind. So talk me through how you achieve that.
It's all on the shooting of it, and we kind of composite the Mirror Issa takes into the takes of real Issa, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So when we're shooting real Issa, the mirror is empty, and we see her shoulder, we see her kind of perform on the side if it's a wide shot, or and then for her close-ups, obviously it's just her with the camera right in front. And those are tricky because it takes a lot of like rotoscoping and comping different shots together. But to be honest with you, that's actually the simpler, the
Really?
simplest of all Mirror Issa scenes, because I control the pacing of it so much better than like anything else. Well, like the oneer that Kevin shot at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a joker. He calls me. He's like, "Hey, I want you to take a look at this in the morning because I don't know if it's going to work, but just take a look." It's like, okay. So I take a look in the morning, and I'm like, "Oh my god, like how am I going to make this work?" Like he did a oneer for Mirror Issa, did a oneer for real Issa, and she's crossing back and forth in front of Mirror Issa, which is challenging for VFX to kind of rotoscope that out.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, the bigger challenge actually is that their performances never sunk up because, Issa was playing both versions of herself, but they never played back. So like if she's real Issa, they never played back her version of Mirror Issa so that she could have something to perform to. Right. So like we're talking and you can respond when I respond and it's a natural pacing, but without that, their conversations were never going to line up ever. So I had to figure out like ways to find, like edit points that were invisible so I can change takes if I needed. And then also I found, places where there are pauses so I can kind of slow it way down so that it would look like real Issa was listening to Mirror Issa or vice versa, and then speed it right up so that they can, respond to one another with the right pacing of a natural conversation. And it had to be done so that you can't even see it, right? Because it doesn't work if you see the slow-mo, so it
No
had to look
way. I had no
natural.
idea. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It took a
incredible.
lot to put that together.
I can imagine. I mean, I'm glad that you were able to show us some of the secrets now that the show's done and dusted, because that mirror stuff has always just perplexed me. And it's so like, it's not really like, we're not watching the Avengers here. Like, it's just something that I've never been able to figure out. So that's very good to know. I was also wondering, you talked a little bit about in the fantasies, letting the show breathe a bit so we can see what Issa's panning around and looking at. But I noticed in the beginning of this episode, this happens from time to time, where you're just letting the people who are on camera breathe a bit. And so I noticed that when Issa and Nathan are in bed, it's mainly a one shot with very little cutting. And I'm just wondering why do you make the decision to go with a static shot where there's minimal editing? Why is it more appropriate for emotion or for impact? Talk me through that.
A lot of it was just to put people in the environment with them. This was such an intimate moment. I didn't want to manipulate it too much. And my idea was kind of like, you're kind of flying into Baldwin Hills. And then as you get closer to her apartment, the shots get lower to the ground. And
Yeah.
then you start with the shoes and you move up to her and Nathan. And for that, it just was so beautiful watching them act together that I was like, okay, well, this is a very intimate moment for them. It's a big step. She's confiding in him about her friend moving and what that feels like. And, I don't know, I just didn't want to cut that up too much. I didn't want to speed it up. I just kind of wanted people to be there with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that it is really effective because then obviously the editing becomes a bit more frequent as the episode progresses. The show also uses a lot of interstitials like wide shot art, streetscape, whatever the market. That's throughout every episode. Is that something that you as editor has a say in, or is that purely just what the director or the writer wants?
Oh no, I enjoy cutting it. It's one of my
I
favorite
figured
things.
you would. Yeah.
Yeah, especially this one because it was the art fair, right? And
Yeah.
so there was so much great art. I mean, this artists that I had never been exposed to. So this was I wanted to make them even longer, but I
Yeah.
knew that it would be gilding the lily. So I was like, all right, let's be judicious and pick the best ones. And yeah, that was so much fun. And being an art major myself, I really appreciated it. And just getting to know different artists, with their photography and painting, and I don't know, it was a breath of fresh air for me, and so I really enjoyed those things, and I put a lot
Yeah,
of.
I love them too. It's one of the it's a signature of the show. A lot of shows do it, but I love the way this show does it. Particularly, it puts us in that sense of place. Particularly as every episode has something different that they wanted to talk about. Final question is also about how I find that the episodes they're edited to the beat or rhythm of the music, particularly the music supervisor's work, not necessarily the score. Is that something that you find challenging, or like what happens first, the chicken or the egg? Is it do you edit it and then the music goes in, or is the music there and you know how you're going to edit it to the music?
I don't edit with music until the very end. I make
Okay.
sure that the story stands on its own, the performances are strong enough without having to dress it up with music. So if it's working, once I put music in it, it just kind of elevates it. And so, I work with Kier Lehman, who is fantastic. I mean, his musical choices are just
Yeah.
so great. And we usually talk about like, hey, this is the tone of the scene. I'm kind of hoping for a song that sounds like this with the lyrics that say that.
Yeah.
And they're always very tall orders, right? And but he comes through, and he always sends great songs, and we put them in, and and then Issa comes in and kind of gives us her opinion and her ideas, because oftentimes she's very big into music, so she's always listening to music, and she has an idea. Oh, for this episode, I think I want to use this song.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a fun process. It's a fun process, and sometimes we'll both have the idea of using the same song but in completely different context. And that
Yeah.
happened in one of my episodes where, like, I think in Carrie's episode, when she's leaving the hospital, she wanted to use a song called "Like That Bitch," and 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 I thought, oh, okay, well that works fine, because she's strutting out with her new clothes, and it's works, totally works. But I was like, but you know what though? In the episode where she throws a baby in the trash and then she walks away with the evil laugh, I was like, that's where that should be.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
and, of course, like, she didn't want to, she wasn't like sure about it until she saw that episode later on. She was like, no, you're right, put that song there.
There's so much going on the show that I hope people realize, and I think that's one of the reasons why you won last year, and you're definitely in with a shot this year. But regardless, Nina, you should be so proud of yourself. Congratulations on your second Insecure nomination, and yeah, good luck on Emmy night.
Thank you so much.